Hey, everybody. As usual, I've made the error and we shall not talk about it. We have 4 cats on with us today. Say hello. You are all cats. If you're not a cat, please identify as such. Topical humor, internet humor. You're welcome. So, it would have been so clever for us to have filters on that we had one day to do that and we've blown it. So, I think, Alex, you actually are a lawyer, aren't you?
Yeah, recovering.
Yeah.
Uh,
So,
uh,
yeah. Okay. Anyway, that's completely not the topic, but we couldn't ignore that. That's the best thing that's happened all year on the internet is
yeah,
the cat
absolutely.
video. Yeah.
It's the best thing that's
So
happened to the legal profession, certainly.
exactly. So what we're really here for today is to talk about sports. Just talk about sports teams and the brands that support them. We're going to talk about what the fan experience looks like in 2021 and maybe even beyond that. So exactly what it means to be a fan, how you engage with the team, and then how tech fits into that. So we've invited great group of folks from INDE. On the top right, you've got Adam, who leads up business development North America, the North American guy. Hey, what's up, Adam?
All good, all good.
North American guy. Hey.
Hey,
So lower left, or actually, let's just keep it clockwise. We've got Norby, who is the CTO at INDE. Hey there. And Alex, who is the COO at INDE. Hello to you, sir. And I am an actual North American guy from this accent, but I'm not in North America. I'm in Europe, somewhere in an undisclosed location, originally from Cleveland. I did see that we had someone from the Cavs signing up to join us. So whether or not that person is joining, hello to you, sir. And how are things? You good? Okay. Cleveland, represent. You have to sometimes. That's where I'm from. It's like forever. You can be gone for 20 years, but you're still from there. So, first of all, just wanted to before we get into the tech part of stuff, I know that I've got some sports fans on the line. Some are more diehard than others. Some like some sports versus others. Put on your sport fan cap for a moment and just tell me, what is it like to be a sports fan now? Anybody?
Well, it was a really good quote I heard this week, listening to a rugby podcast, which was one of the many sports I try and follow. And it said that the games define the weekend. Like having a rugby game on or a Saturday or a Sunday, it turns it into a weekend. Otherwise the days tend to blend all into one, particularly if you've got kind of kids at home and everyone's working at home. The days become very similar, whereas doing a sports event on a Saturday afternoon sort of breaks up that week, gives everyone a focus to get excited about. So I think probably sports, arguably from a sort of social context, is probably more important than it has been to give people something to get excited about that isn't just within the 4 walls of their own homes.
And you, Norby, you're really the diehard. And we just want to, I think, despite being a chief technical officer, you are the least technically inclined when it comes to sports. This is the impression I have from our Slack conversations. And I really would just love to hear what your deal is on that. Because you are a CTO, but you're muted. You're muted. Let me unmute you. Sorry.
sorry.
Okay. Now that you've said all the mean stuff, while you're on mute. No, but go ahead. So tell us I'll restate the question. The question is, what's your deal?
Well, what's my deal? Well, I was a sports fan first, and then became CTO. So it's like the CTO-ness didn't really bleed into the sports fanship, and of course, on some level, it did. But I'm a sports fan when it comes to sports, and well, I could lie and tell you that I don't care about technology when it comes to sports, but I do. But at the same time, I live and die for the games. And that comes with soccer, football, basketball, and all that. Really, all sports, except for maybe chess. But That's just because it's not that exciting for me personally.
But from a tech standpoint, that's so easy. The tech thing, like if chess was the sport, man, this would be a good year to be at home.
That's true.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
but it's just not the sport, right? So that's, I mean, it is in a way, but in its own thing. But just to bring us back to a little taste of life before things got weird in the sporting world, and just kind of like what a fan experience may have looked like, and just queuing up a little video. Let's give this two. So let's just let that roll one more time, and just let it roll. Okay, cool. So FYI, experimental video feature on our streaming platform, which I'm testing right now in real time. But I think we can generally see the gist here. I saw this. You won't believe me, but I do, through my daughter, follow ESPN on TikTok. And then I also saw that you all had posted this in the last few days. So maybe Adam, tell me what we're looking at here, and promise us that it was pre-COVID, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And when it comes to just the previous question, I'm all about the social aspect, and this video really sums it up all. And full disclosure, this is from last year. So in the comment section, you could see a lot of people worrying about where are the masks. Well, this was from last year. And ESPN actually shared this bit just now on their TikTok. And so basically, this snippet shows Lamar Jackson showing up and meeting his AR version in the fan zone. So they're all super excited about and very grateful to ESPN for doing that share now. So that's really the background. This was an experience that we built with 4 NFL franchises for last year's game, and then the video is still making rounds on the internet from that.
So this would have been like your classic area, kind of like the fan zone. What they always had a name, right? Like the fan zone outside the venue. And I guess what you're seeing here, you've got the level of player engagement. In this case, this was like the fun part where he was, Lamar actually could come out and surprise a fan. That didn't happen every time. So then they kind of had the AR stand-in. But if you think about what you would get as a fan out of the normal execution here, you get kind of something shareable, something that brings you closer. How do you think, and maybe that's a question for you, Norby, as well, like how are you doing that? How are you sharing the fan experience with other fans now? Or are you actually? Is that possible?
You mean the same experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think
right
if you think of like what something like this does, it's like everybody's coming together to have like another level experience with the team outside of the game. So is there another level of shared social experience possible now, or are we just kind of doomed to be individual sports fans for a while?
I'm an optimist, so for a while probably, but I think this experience, this particular one, sure, people are standing around, but this particular experience is still valid because at the end of the day, you're standing alone or with your friend or your partner in front of the screen, and you don't have an actual physical contact with the player. So, as you know, these guys are really famous, and they don't have a lot of free time, so they cannot really just come out and meet fans. So this is a great way for fans to connect with these players and stars, and make them more accessible. In terms of current times. And in terms of this particular experience, this particular system, we've made it touchless. So I say that it's COVID safe for now.
So just a really interesting comment came in. So football, and this may be, let's just say that it's either version of football, has become what Formula One once was. It makes me sleep. So But interesting here, Andrea saying, I do comment through the games via WhatsApp with my friends. And I think this leads to a pretty interesting phenomenon that's been going on for years. Not a new thing, but the second screen. The idea that you've got something else going. You guys have been in the game for a while. You've heard that buzzword. So where would you say, talk us through the evolution of the second screen and sports, and also what kind of opportunity is there that we've untapped yet?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think that sports is very much a kind of televisual experience. The economics of the sports industry are generally driven by television, TV rights, because the TV money is generally the biggest income stream that most sports have. And that then drives sponsorship income, because clearly sponsorship you're buying partly as a media buy. And because it's such a focus of what people are doing, even outside of kind of COVID times, it really does drive people's activity. But the reality is that a lot of sports, there's not a lot happening all the time. So let's look at Formula One as a great example. Like if you didn't have TV, it would not actually be a particularly exciting viewing experience, because you might be at one point on a track and you've got lots of cars going past you really quickly. Now, you may be lucky and you may be at a point where someone is overtaking someone else, or someone is, clearly not wishing ill on anyone, but maybe there's a crash or there's something interesting happening. But the reality is you can go to a Formula One or a Formula E event and stand at a place on the track, and as a spectator, there's not a lot going on. As a spectator in your own home, you've got a curated experience giving you lots of different angles of lots of different parts of the course, telling you what's going on. But even then, there's not a huge amount going on all the time. Hence why it's great for people to be able to have things to do on their phone. Maybe they're betting. I mean, the betting companies are clearly making a fortune out of in-running opportunities in all sorts of sports. You've got all kinds of social activities going on. People might be saying, "Oh my God, what's going to happen next? Oh yeah, this guy's terrible, isn't he?" Having a chat, as I think it was Andreas said earlier on, people saying, "Yeah, well, what's going to happen next in this game because it's really boring." And that's now become really part of our televisual experience, and not just in sport, clearly in lots of other TV experiences, whether that might be like talent shows or whatever, that people will use now their tablet or their phone to interact in a different way, to comment around the event. And that in itself means that this is now part of the furniture for us. We're not just staring at a screen, we're expecting something else to come with it.
Adam, just on the second screen thing, or just kind of on the fan engagement thing in general, I know that you are having conversations in the States kind of on the daily basis. You get a lot of sports teams or brands working, sponsoring sports teams in some way or the other. What do you think their reactions have been to the last 12 months or so, and how they do business and how they attract fans? What's kind of keeping them up at night? Give us a sense of the temperature of that room when it comes to sports teams.
Yeah. Well, I think, how all that is panning out at the moment is that we are kind of having three stages, right? Now we are in the stage when, like everything that can happen in terms of engagement is happening through television, plus that second screen, which is your mobile phone. So that's where when you keep in touch with friends, if you're not in the same room. So that's the first stage where we are at. Do we have you, Brett?
Yeah, I'm just giving you more screen space, but I still hear you. So I'm keep going. So.
Cool. I thought you dropped. Yeah. So I think that's that's the first phase, and that's been going on since April. Since the lockdown started, and then what's going to happen is most leagues will allow some fans into the stadium, And that's one of the main challenges that is coming from teams, or one of the main worries is that if we have less fans, plus you getting into the stadium is kind of tedious, because you need to go through different protocols, and you still need to feel safe, and it needs to be fun. Like, will it be worthwhile for the fans? But that's going to be that's going to happen most probably. So MLS, for example, is starting early April, and most probably some fans will be able to will be able to enter the stadium, and then obviously the third stage will be when we have full attendance again. Now when it comes to the first stage that we are in right now, you need to basically leverage smartphones to engage fans. That's the only way you can do that, besides the television. In the second stage, then we can always look at, and there are conversations around connecting in stadium screens with the mobile experience. So you engage people who are outside the stadium, but also the ones who are lucky enough to get in, and then generate shareable content from there. And then basically in the third stage, which we're all waiting for, is when you have the full access again and the full stadium experience. So I think the main worry is how do teams, brands keep in touch with the fans in the meantime, and then secondly, basically how they make the comeback a virtual event, and kind of everyone is preparing for a big reopening, to be fair, on the teams and brand side. So that's what we are hearing from the teams and the brands at the moment.
So do you feel that they're really that they've turned like the mental corner, and they're ready to start preparing the big reopening? That's there now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. Now it's more in the league than on the teams, because the teams and the brands are like, we really like to do something, but they are kind of waiting for the league to give the guidelines. So that's the current situation.
So it's the wait and see of how how physical can we get, how soon. Are you seeing the stadiums, venues? That's one thing, but the fan, and then so. Just to recap, right? So we're sitting at home with our TV. We've got our second screen, which is our mobile phone, maybe our tablet if we can fit it in one hand, right? We've got the stadiums. Those are kind of a question mark about when exactly, although people are ready to start planning, which is already different. I think the switch of from one year to the next allowed this mental switch, and then we had the vaccine. Oh, that's not so fast, and now it feels maybe it's going to be okay. Just praying that those variants don't continue to vary as much as they do. But beyond that, I'm just thinking there are other touch points that are actually more accessible for a fan, and that's kind of like retail, right? So you in many places, before you'll be able to go to a game, you will be able to go to a store. Or what do you think about that, like retail wise? Does that fit into the equation?
Yeah, I think absolutely, and also Alex did a really interesting point when we were just talking about this session beforehand, is that in moments of huge change, you need to look at what is it that actually changed forever, and what are the things that stay the same. Right, and I think in terms of just mindset, or as mentioned, just having those larger changes when it comes to the brand's approach or the team's approach. One thing that we certainly see is that they feel they need to provide more value to the fans through digital means as well. So in truth, you can actually turn this time to your advantage, because you can access to the players was always a bottleneck in the whole experience. If you want to have a photo experience, or if you want to, so to speak, meet and greet with the players. Now, you can do all that. For example, the one that you just brought up is a great example for an interactive experience when you can meet with the players. So that's one opportunity right there. The second opportunity is like everything that can happen backstage, and especially hardcore fans such as Norby and all the guys who would love to know more about and experience more about what's happening, in the locker room, in the tunnel before the players walk out. Now suddenly all those aspects became a focal point and a potential opportunity for brands and the teams leverage. So how we see that is the teams and the brands who's going to kind of come out on top and win, so to speak, the attention game that we are playing right now are the ones who rather look at the opportunity standpoint, and just try to explore those areas where fans always wanted to go, but now it's all there and all accessible through technology.
So if you think of kind of that planning phase, right? So you've got obviously crisis, opportunities, things are happening. So you can reinvent as you go along. I think many find it safer just to wait things out and then to plan the big thing, right? Because they, if you want to know what fans will want when this all blows over, it's pretty safe to know what they'll want because it's what they wanted before. And I think everyone is counting on this moment of reawakening. And it's just a matter of when that is. So if you have people or sports teams or brands or whatever, and they're saying, how do I plan something for that big moment? Like, how do I lay the groundwork so I can snap my fingers and make it happen, even when I don't know when I can make it happen? Like, what do you do now so that you're not just sitting around twiddling your thumbs? Like, what's the planning phase?
I think one of the challenges that all sports events and organizations and clubs and governing bodies all face is that we are all terribly excited about the moment when we can all go back to doing what we were doing before, which is going back to a stadium-based experience being the pinnacle of your ability to experience a sports event or a sports organization. But the reality is that that's going to happen slowly. It's not going to happen quickly. Secondly, that is not going to happen in the same way. And I think also when you've had people not be in the stadium and had to focus on the TV experience, when they then go back to the stadium, they'll be thinking, well, was this what I thought it was going to be? And was the experience I had at home, was that better? Or was it just different? And, we've always been an organization that's thought about, well, how do we bring digital innovation into the real world environment? Because that's fundamentally what AR is about. It's not, you're not living in a digital bubble. We're living in a real world, and we're bringing digital into that real world to enhance it, to augment it. And I think one of the changes that hopefully, and we believe will happen, is that people will look at what they will have in the future, and we're looking to say, well, actually, how do we make that better? Because we've had TV at home, and interactive at home, and then we've gone back to events. But maybe are the events are the same as we were before? And why can't we just combine the two? And that, I think, is a channel that people are starting to investigate in the industry. But I think, strangely enough, for an industry that's perceived as being very dynamic, it's actually very conservative. And these changes are happening very, very slowly, which is a shame because this is progress doesn't stop.
If you are waiting for the big thing to implement something that's kick-ass and meaningful, then you are missing the road to that big thing. So the fan engagement on that road, the knowledge and the experience you gain, and the information or the feedback that you gain from your fans, you are missing on that. So when you think that that big bang that you are talking about is going to be great, you are making assumptions. While if you can create an AR, a technical experience, it doesn't need to be AR. It's just some connecting with the fan engagement. When you're creating that and go step by step towards a big thing, then you will know what the big thing is, because you will have heard back from the fans, and you have the feedback from the fans.
Big question this year. The Olympics, if they happen, when they happen, let's go with that. Let's be optimistic, like Norby. How's that going to be, right? So obviously the Olympics were always something that most of us will have observed from a distance, but they will have never occurred in the context that we have now. So do we have different expectations as fans now about how we interact with a bunch of games, a bunch of sports that we've always had to watch from afar? So do we expect that we're having lots of simultaneous watch parties on Zoom calls? Like, are we definitely second screening with some mobile AR activations? Like, are we not just replacing what we used to have, but do we expect more this year out of something like that? What do you think?
Well, I think we've seen some very good examples of what we can expect in that sense. Like, Super Bowl this weekend was a great one in terms of the actual fan experience that you can expect. And also, for example, the inauguration of Joe Biden in the States, that was an awesome show, by the way. But the big difference is that, the Olympics are going to run for weeks. So you need to provide more opportunity for people for a social experience. And, like Andrea's previous comment, like, he's chatting with friends on WhatsApp. I think we will see a huge expansion of all that through, via digital, via smartphones, if really, we'll still have that limitation that fans cannot enter the space. So I think that's one thing. And then the second question is how do athletes, teams, and the Olympic Committee would like to create content from on site, right? Because that's lots of things will be happening. So for you to see something fun with the athletes, that could be something that's it becomes really meaningful via social media. So I think those are two very interesting aspects. If we kind of assume that there will be no fans at all on location.
It's really interesting. Sorry, Novi, please.
Okay, so and the big question is, as a sports fan, is how does it affect the athletes? That there are no feedback from fans around what will be their performance. Of course, we are talking about now fan engagement and how technology can help that, but I think it's also an important question how that is solved. I know that I've seen an example of I think it was a Japanese soccer game, or maybe multiple soccer games, where fans could react via mobile app, react to what's happening on the pitch. And then the reaction was, I'm not sure if it was just televised or if it was broadcasted to the stadium as well, but that could be something that will happen or could happen in Japan this year, hopefully.
It's interesting in that I remember several months ago when they were talking about bringing soccer back onto live TV in the UK, that I was contacted by someone who'd been contacted by the broadcaster to say, what can we do to make the experience more of an experience? Because clearly we can't have any fans in the stadium. What do we do with that real estate? What do we do to represent the fans? And there were some really interesting ideas came out of it. Like, you could even have, you could have fan faces superimposed onto kind of into a sort of green screen setup so that people would actually appear in the stadium. There was all kind of interactive elements that you could have in the stadium. But then what did the TV companies do? Well, what they do, they just do fake noise. Yeah. It's just a massive wasted opportunity. And I think go back to, again, like to what we said before, you can see the audience in Tokyo. It's made in the stadium or much in the stadium. That's a huge opportunity for someone. You can actually really do something with that spare real estate. But the reality is, unless someone moves pretty quickly, what will happen is all the interaction will happen on WhatsApp. And our friend Mr. Zuckerberg will sit there sucking people's data. So it's an opportunity for the sports organizations to take control of that channel and curate that channel and to enhance the participation as a result. because the more you curate, the more likely you're going to have a more engaging experience. But again, it requires a different sort of mindset, shift to take on board innovation. And at the moment, it's very frustrating that it takes a long time to change people's perception. Again, because unfortunately, people are making too much money out of TV. And when you're making plenty of money, you don't need to innovate. That's the problem. The sports organizations need to innovate because they don't have the match day or the game day, event day revenue from people coming through turnstiles or paying tickets. They need to innovate. They're not getting the same revenue that they had to. But the TV companies, they don't need to innovate because they're just getting the same money as they got last time. So where people need to drive change, it's at the organization level, not at the broadcast level.
So, a question coming in from Matt. Thanks, Matt, for your question. Are you seeing any increased appetite for digital experiences actually in the stadium? Something like the Lombardi hologram that happened at the Super Bowl pregame. So, what do you guys think on that? Adam, you might know.
Oh yeah. And hey, man, thanks for showing up. So yeah, absolutely, and I think that really falls into the category of what is it that's not going to change, right? Because we are all social beings. We gonna go back to socializing, and we gonna go back to the stadium experience once the restrictions are lifted. So absolutely, what we see on the teams and on the brand side is planning for that, planning for those experiences in stadium, which can either be kiosk size or take over the large jumbotrons that they have pre-installed already. So those are two avenues, two main avenues that we see when it comes to screen-based in stadium. But again, I think the idea of you expanding that experience beyond the stadium is gonna also stay with us, and this is where it all becomes, so to speak, omni-channel, because then like you can look at the screens in stadium, but also the teams and the brands will want to have that additional reach through using digital and social filters and all that. But as you guys mentioned, we just got off a call with one of the major companies who are providing software for digital out of home, and one thing that our partner mentioned there, and that struck me, is that we always say content is king, but context is everything. Yeah. Which is I think it's a huge perspective, because the teams and for example the Olympics committee, the players would all need to stand behind the idea of us connecting via digital. That's when it becomes really powerful. If just a brand does it, or like a couple teams, that will have an impact, but it's far less than if the entire league or the most of the teams or some major athletes say, what guys, like, we can't have you as fans on site, but let's try to create something together. Now, this might sound like a big vision, but I think like we would need to all go a little bit harder on all that, when it comes to the different stakeholders working together.
Just throwing up that in the background that we have a little bit of mood music to the kind of stuff that people are kind of thinking about. You mentioned screen-based. To me, if I watch a video like this now, obviously it came from a different time. But do you see, in the conversations you have, do you see like sports teams or sponsors willing to go through and put on something like this in a world where everyone is masked, right? Just a very, so could we just do the same thing, but with masks on? Because there will come a time when we're allowed to be out, but then they're like, but wear the mask. So just to take a very practical consideration, do masks kill these things or what? Like, this is the mask question that I just thought of. So go.
Yeah. Good question. Actually, we already have a couple project videos up on the website. For example, the one that came from Graceland, where we created an experience with Elvis. We used archive footage to basically make Elvis come back to life, because Graceland down in Memphis was using this time to basically revamp the whole space for the reopening, and we had visitors in masks. So it seems, you know, they weren't really bothered, or, you know, like, we just provided a larger space so you could remove your mask for the photo opportunity. So there are like easy workarounds when it comes to all that. But yes, indeed, you know, these type of setups are actually are part of the roadmaps for teams, you know, in the MLS, in NFL. So we are having all these conversations, but, you know, obviously the big variable is having fans on site for something like this.
Yeah, and I just wonder, like, what I'm thinking of myself as a fan going back to a place like this, and just after almost, you know, a year and a half, maybe 2 years, not remembering how to do it, to be a fan in a place, right? So maybe that's just like a one, you know, it's either going to be really weird for a while, or it's going to be you snap right back to what it was before. Norby, what do you think? If you get to go back, are you like right back in it?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think, if you are a true fan who attends the matches, games, then it's just a snap and then you're back. Maybe even more enthusiastic than you were before. But I think what last year and this year taught us as fans, that you can expect more from the digital on the digital front in stadium as well as at home. So yes, when we go back to the stadiums, it's a instant travel back in time to 2019 in your mind, but at the same time you were accustomed to all the digital touch points that happened in the last year and this year.
Just wanted to reflect, and I see a cool question coming in, but I want to set it up because it's a big question. It's the idea that, you know, if we look at these, a lot of these experiences are very location-based, they're stadium-based. Have we not learned, or can we not pivot to maybe democratizing what it takes to get into the game, you know, and think about innovation not only in stadium but also at home, right? So basically to make it more accessible. So this is going to probably cover everyone's face, but I'm going to put it up. Okay, so Ant's asking. So, you know, he's a Liverpool fan. The stadium capacity is what it is, but there's millions, you know, tens of millions of other fans. So why not try to bring them into the stadium in a way that is not physically doing that, and focus on that as the innovation rather than how we rethink the actual stadium experience. What do you guys think about that?
That's the next evolution of the second screen, basically. So you're watching the game on or the match on TV, and then you have a secondary, not necessarily a screen, but a view of the whole game. That could be like a hawk-eye or an eagle-eye view of the pitch. That could be a 3D representation of data of the match and places of the players all around the pitch. So I think that's going to be the next step in the evolution of the second screen. And first, it will have to be on the small screen of your mobile phone or maybe your tablet if you have one, and then it will move on to the wearables, the smart glasses, and the smart eyewears.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good question, and I think ultimately there's a lot of lessons can be learned from the music industry, and the live event, it really is the kind of pinnacle of the experience that the fan can have of their, you know, of the person they're following, whether that be a musical artist, whether that be a team, a sporting event, and it's priced accordingly, and the ability to even access tickets is rarefied. I mean, the Olympics is very challenging to get access to tickets, whether you can afford them or not. And I think ultimately what the clubs are doing, if they're not thinking about how to expand the experience to the broader audience, they're ultimately missing out on how to monetize that audience effectively. You can create digital experiences which which are meaningful in themselves. There's no reason why you couldn't have like a virtual stadium tour, for example, from a club shop in Singapore of a stadium that's in Manchester or Milan or Buenos Aires. We talked to the PGA Tour in Asia a few months ago about how you create an experience that gives people an understanding of the topography of a golf hole that you simply won't get from a TV screen, because from a TV screen you kind of almost looking at it in 2D, and it's basically kind of grass with some bunkers and holes. You don't really get a sense of the shot that the player has to make in order to get to the hole. But you can have that at home. There's no reason why you can't. You can have that on your second screen. You could have it even holographically as something that people can experience. And so these are the things that people are missing out on. It is possible to not only enhance the televisual experience, but to really create something which is really quite radically different, and is meaningful in itself. And as we all know, people people want a piece of these brands. People want a piece of sports brands in particular. Esports has gone nuts. I mean, it's the most extraordinary kind of growth area. The money involved in it is prodigious, and that's not something we'd have seen 10 years ago. But you see now, most of the Premier League teams in the UK will have their own esports teams that they will be investing a huge amount of money in, and that shows the value of the digital experience in itself. That's not replaying a game. That's that's people playing their own games with digital teams. And I think that organizations are missing out unless they're really looking at effectively 3D digital as being a separate channel. This is not just TV. It's not just the internet, which is in most cases play out of content or maybe live text. This is new. This is 3D. It's really interesting, and it's engaging and interactive in a way that linear TV is not. But even that the second screen with text innovation is not. This is really different.
So just a question I think kind of ties that together. Just thinking about technology, or even phenomenon like esports, which wasn't as big as it was. That's been catalyzed by the pandemic. We've seen big jumps in consumer augmented reality technology, that it's easier for us to access that on our phones now. It's anybody's guess if that would have moved as fast as it has, pandemic or no pandemic. My sense is it's moved faster. So say we've got our second screen, AR is always kind of like a big like showpiece technology. But I think the way I hear you describe it in this comment is more like almost a semi-passive thing that you're doing on your second screen. So in that semi-passive exercise with your phone up, are you willing to engage and buy a product on the back of that, right? So it's not this Jurassic Park, oh my God, experience. It's just a casual like do buy me, right? So what do you think about products, about buying something through an AR activation on your mobile?
Yeah, well, first point on Bob's comment, that's spot on. Like that's.
Oh, sorry. Just one thing. This was the comment I meant to show. Sorry. But Bob, we'll jump in that in a second. But I thought I was showing Tony's, who asked about AR activated merchandise. So you're all probably deeply confused. But there you go.
Yeah, got it. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Yeah. AR activated merchandise, is it a thing?
Yeah, it's already happening. So we have a campaign running with Benefit Cosmetics, for example, at the moment, which does exactly that. You can just click through a link or scan a QR code, and that drops you to an experience page. You can trigger a cute 3D character, and then you receive a prompt to go to the product site and purchase. So it can be as simple as that. And then we see very good examples happening. One of my favorite ones was the tie-up between the Shanghai Fashion Show and Tmall in China, when it was a digital fashion show, and then you could, like, real time when the catwalk was happening, you could just swipe up on WeChat and buy the actual garments, or through Tmall, and buy the actual piece of clothing that were on the models real time. That amazing. And the conversion rates that those guys generated with that exercise was mind blowing. So I think anyone would be happy with that. So it really comes down to the question that Dan just mentioned is, like you need to focus on the value. Like the technology and the content can be created for its own sake. It needs to deliver value to the customer, to the fan, and then, by the way, incentivize you to purchase. But the context would need to be, like that's the key. But I do need to receive value as the end user, as the customer, to to make the jump and buy the piece of clothing or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, they're both very good kind of questions. I mean, I go back to sort of Bob's point. I mean, ultimately, the real trick to making the experience really compelling is designing it in a way that makes it as such, that actually you will integrate the experience into that specific environment. You curate an experience that's appropriate for the channel that people are consuming it down. An AR experience has to reflect the affordances that AR brings. And that in itself then reflects the values of the event, maybe it reflects the values of the sponsor, which ultimately delivers value. And that's ultimately what everyone's looking for. So it isn't just enough to just create a gimmick with a fancy button that goes ping. You've got to try and create something which actually really reflects the objectives of the stakeholders in the experience.
Well, I could think of, kind of low-hanging fruit would just be selling, your merch. There's the player on screen in the game, and then there's the player that you put in your living room, and he's got all the stuff that you can buy. I mean, it's pretty simple, and you're probably already going to buy one of those things at some point in the next 6 months. And then if you're sitting there with your family, and then you have a child version of Lamar. Right. Wouldn't that be funny to get, Lamar as a child and then be like, yes, my daughter needs to have that jersey. It would just be fun. Right. So, and that's just my, like on the spot brainstorm for how we can make this work, guys. So I think there's just easy wins there. And maybe that, the sports world, now that this thing becomes a viable tool and is easier, that maybe they need to, I mean, on the one hand, you've got the reinventing, like very blue sky innovation type stuff, which seems blue sky right now because they're like, guys, let's just get people back in stadiums and do what we always did, and then we'll innovate. But they have this opportunity to just reap the fruits of whatever happened during the pandemic from a technology perspective, to just experiment and just do some A/B testing. Let's put this thing up on the phone and see if it sells a jersey. I probably will, right? So you think we're in the low-hanging fruit phase here? There's some easy wins.
Physical version, a physical jersey. It could be a digital jersey. You might just buy a digital jersey for using in any number of digital platforms.
Right.
The opportunities are as limited as people's imaginations fundamentally, because that's the kind of digital physical, the magic of integrating the two worlds.
Yeah, and also it's like you either focus on IP or talent or on the product, right? And through tech or via AR, you can touch on both points basically. You can either create attention by creating an experience for the player, or you can actually push product. Like the Adidas experience that you brought up before, that's a very subtle one, because that's Adidas Tango League, and Marcello in that experience was wearing the new boots which were launched. That's, by the way, back in 2018. So it can be very subtle, or it can be very in your face, and it's like here's a jersey, here's the here's a mascara. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So he's wearing the brand new boots, so the fans saw these boots first time on him. Part of the experience.
But at that point, they couldn't easily tap and click on their phones to buy the boots, right?
No, it's just the build-up. Like Nike, they love to do that.
But if you would do it now, I mean, obviously this is a bit screen-based and that kind of thing, but if there was some kind of, you could, just being no AR expert myself and the lay person who wants to see how this technology is actually accessible and useful, then I could see, putting Marcello in my living room, having him dance a little bit or just perform for me, however he does that, and then being able to just peruse his wardrobe, right? I mean, that it's as easy enough as that, you know. So just a regular person, I often like when I talk to AR people or just tech people, I'm like, just keep it simple for me. Just let this guy dance for me for a second, do some juggling with his football, and then I'll like check out his kicks. It's fine, right? It doesn't have to be more than that. So don't you think that people always want to go really big when they can just keep it simple? No?
Yeah. Because like, you know, what is omni-channel? Like we throw around this word like omni-channel. It's like it's basically you don't have a delay between seeing something and being able to use it or purchase it, or you know, like the brand doesn't have to basically like pull data from 6 different databases to identify you and your preferences. Like it's all there. It's all part of one single experience that it's, you know, it's fairly better for everyone.
Well, we have Ant, who's definitely ready to buy, buy the virtual jersey, take it into virtual reality and alt space. So he's got, you know, you can put your Oculus on, go virtual, and you don't even have to physically have the shirt, but you have it in the virtual world. So that whole kind of virtual revolution too, and how all this stuff fits together. We can thank, I guess, Travis Scott and Fortnite for mainstreaming what that whole thing. So that's another show. But the idea that, that was already going, but I really think that brought us into the idea that we may be more ready than we were before to inhabit a virtual universe for multiple hours of our day. And in that universe, we're spending all this time, we do care about the LFC jersey, right? So, and maybe it's just not an easy thing to get. You have to earn it. You have to buy it, whatever the case may be. That business model is there. But I think if you had to connect the Fortnite in the gaming world or you know, the alt space world, whatever that may be, with like the mainstream sports world and the retail world, then those two were like not really talking. But now they might be talking, right? Yeah. So it's quite a shift there.
It's an interesting. I mean, there's a big challenge in the industry as well, and again, and this goes back to the money question, as most things tend to, in that money tends to drive ultimately where attention sits, because you can afford to push particular channels because you know that you're going to get the money back. So let's look at licensing as a kind of great example of an industry that actually is amazingly conservative and tends to be driven by people placing very safe bets, i.e. that I will license you my brand in return for you guaranteeing me a large chunk of money, which basically means for me is no risk in it. And I've seen this multiple times where there's a new platform emerges or a new game emerges, and it's really interesting from a functionality perspective, but you ultimately want to have content in it. You want to have branded content because that's the most compelling. But often the rights holders demand so much money, it effectively kills the opportunity. Now, the interesting thing about the current economic crisis is that the clubs are having to look for different channels, but from which they can monetize their brand. They're having to look outside of, I'll tell you, I'll get my money out of the latest EA FIFA game, or you know, I'll get my money out of my broadcast deal with the Premier League. I'll have to look at things differently. So maybe we will get brands looking at maybe new channels where, you can get an LFC shirt to use on a different platform, and you get a royalty based on virtual use. You just hope that the brands are out there trying new things, because ultimately, you know, you can take a view that I don't need the money, or you can take a view that I need to be in these new channels because I'm positioning myself for that modern audience. And I think that's probably what we may see more of.
Yeah, and I think, you know, what we've seen here, and just to wrap us up, because I know we sometimes lose people if we go a little bit too long, even if we're super excited. But I think, you know, just to recap, what we may have landed on is that there's this, first of all, easiest thing to spot is the desire to get back to normal. And when that happens, Norby's like, click, right? So that's one opportunity, is to do what you did before. Totally valid strategy. If you're a team or a brand, that's going to work, no doubt about it. But then there's this other track to really experiment and embrace what may have changed in the meantime. because actually life did go on, even if you felt like it didn't. It did. Things changed. Technologies were developed. Companies fell, but companies grew, right? Technology has become more accessible, and if you wanted to experiment with something like AR, maybe you weren't ready to do that before, but now it's easy enough that you can at least A/B test something, and you'll have a sense if it's going to work for you or not, right? So there's two parts of the spectrum there, two extremes, and opportunities on every side. What's for sure is that people love sports, and they're going to figure out a way to do their sport thing, and it's up to us to reinvent what that experience looks like, right? So thanks a lot, guys, for joining. Thanks for all the commenters. There's more happening in the comments. Esports boom. There's even more. Wow, we always get this rush of comments at the end, which we can't take. But we'll do more of this. I think the sports topic is a big one, and we'll probably have to do multiple shows especially as we approach the Olympics, because what other better excuse is there? So thanks again. This has been AR Explainer, and we'll see you all next time.